All right, thank you for staying with Daybreak. The conversation continues even during the break. Some very interesting statistics
about Egypt and Israel.
Yeah, in fact, that's where I want to go to. And Dr. Mwita, you're the one who's talking about this. There was a question from one of the viewers about whether we should rely on rain-fed
our irrigation system.
And also they were talking about places like Egypt have managed to cope being virtually almost a desert. So what is so different between them and us?
What are we doing wrong that Egypt is doing right?
I guess it's about what I alluded to, you know, changing policies into actions.
Yeah.
So because we have brilliant policies in this country, whether it is in agriculture, water, and so on.
Yeah.
So if we can transform those policies into actions, let us go where the action is supposed to be.
Yeah.
Let the experts work with the farmers, in the farms, not in the offices. Let the agronomist, let that expert in post-harvest work with the farmers in order to help them understand how to preserve and prevent the losses.
You mentioned that you were in Israel earlier on. Yeah, you've been there. What did you see that is so different?
Well, I guess that they have very high impact water efficiency use. They don't lose any drop of water. They recycle each drop of water, including what they flush in the toilet, so that they can use it to make it more productive. And therefore, even when they irrigate their farms, that water is captured somewhere. So if you look at the way we do the traditional irrigation, like we have a problem. There was a time I saw an article where we are actually exporting virtue water in the form of flowers. You know, there's a lot of flower exports from some of these investors who invest in floriculture and so on. So the moment you export flowers, maybe this much tons, what are you doing? You're taking a lot of water, because the flowers actually should not go beyond 3 hours after they have been cut.
I've never thought about it.
So that it can be taken to, you know, markets out there. So how much water do you carry in
when
fresh?
you export flowers, you're exporting water.
You also, because of course you have used greenhouses to, you know, to produce flowers.
When you say they recycle the water, that's the part I'm still stuck on. Every single drop, is it per household? Is it, do they have a plant? What happens?
Yeah, they have like a system which they have put in place that you cannot just waste water.
All households.
You know, like even going to just a tap, you would find it automated. You don't have to wash your hands with running water. You just immediately after. Of course, you have seen some of these things when you go to some of these hotels and so on,
where they have
whereby you can just wash your hands within maybe 5 seconds, and the moment you move your hands, it stops. But what happens with the old technology when you don't want to change, it keeps running.
Isn't that not a government-based project, and would it work here in Kenya?
Well, it can work, I guess, in terms of automating, doing things using technology. It is very possible. Like now, going to your issue whether rain-fed agriculture is sustainable. Well, it can to some extent, but then it will depend on how you utilize that information. Because the moment, for example, give a forecast so that farmers can use it to plan, it needs to be customized. I talked about participatory scenario planning and bringing those stakeholders together and saying, well, we expect rains to be of this magnitude. What kind of crops do you think you can adopt at this particular time with this kind of rainfall?
And you also said that they have food bunkers that can last them 100 years.
They have storage of food which can last them for a very long time. Production stopped.
I'm still on the flower export part. Dr. Richard Munang, there's another question that came in, the issue of fixed prices before harvest and how that would probably help with post-harvest, and the contract farming. Could you give us your thoughts on that? And then Peter, because you'd help us understand the biashara aspect of it, whether this is actually doable. Would you want fixed prices as a farmer? But let me begin with you, Dr. Richard Munang.
Yeah, thanks again. I think those are quite very interesting points. The issue is that when you fix prices, when the farmer doesn't even know, because the farmer is not in control of the weather patterns.
So that's not a solution.
Well, not that is not a solution, but it's good to contextualize it before we make the judgment on that. We don't control weather patterns. These are natural processes that happen. When there are droughts, you can't force rain to come because there are droughts. And when there is heavy downpour, you can't force drought to come. These are natural processes that happen. So to tie a farmer down to a specific price when the farmer is not even sure that he's going to have bumper harvest or not, I think that could be disastrous in the long run and might not be sustainable. But what is more important is the farmer produces. That is a certainty. He produces his or her tomatoes or her vegetables and she's got them. But she cannot be able to store them. She cannot be able to add value to them, to dry them. Because when she can be able to dry her vegetables, she can then speculate when to sell it and when not to sell it, and those will be intact. So it goes back to the point of getting the fundamentals right. And what are the fundamentals? Get solar dryers accessible to the communities and to the farmers to be able to add value to that.
Right. Peter.
Yes.
Bring for me the biashara, the business aspect of it. Do you agree with Dr. Richard Munang? Is it something that you would want as a farmer, as a young farmer?
Let me start by saying, due to the climate change right now, whereby a farmer would plant their crops and then maybe they will not even make it to the harvest. You see, maybe they have dried up. You will find that it will be very hard for you to have a contract farming. You see, because you might even plant those crops and then they are imports from other countries.
They come and
just like last year, there was farmers who planted a lot of garlic, and then you find that just when they are taking it to the market, there is other garlics that is coming from Tanzania. You see, so there becomes an influx of market. You know, an influx. There is an influx of prices in the market. So if you are anticipating to sell a kg at around, let's say, for example, for instance, 100 shillings, you will find that now you'll even sell it at 40 shillings. So
how does that make you feel as a farmer when you know that, you know, here you are, you have gone through, you've harvested garlic only for the government to bring in more importation? As a young farmer in Kenya, how does that make you feel?
First, it's kind of frustrating. You know, because as every farmer, as you're going to the farm, commercially, you want to make profits.
Yes.
You see? But there comes an issue of variation. Because every farmer, let's say, there is an influx of tomatoes in the market. So, if you bring an aspect of variation to your tomatoes, you see, you can be able to export, you see? You will be able to sell at a much higher premium than the normal farmer who is out there who have bought the same tomatoes in the market.
Right.
You see? So, in one way or another, contract farming is very unreliable.
Yes.
Yeah, but if we also look at it this other way, the variation part of it, because we are talking about agriculture, you will find that as a farmer, if you go that way, it has a lot of money.
Well, you said it on this panel, you represent the future of Kenya, or should I say the now of Kenya and the African continent. The now and the future, exactly. So then my question to you is, what does the future of farming look like 10 years to come?
Let me start by saying, if you are growing a tree, a small tree, if you want it to grow straight to the top, you have to start tending it when it's small down there. So this generation that we are in right now, we need to have policies, as Dr. was talking about. We need to have policies to make sure that the youths that are there right now and our children, they can be able to see farming as a good thing, you know, because right now as it stands, farming to many youths, over 60, 70%, it's not a career.
They have a wrong attitude.
A lot of them, they want a suit and a tie to their office. So they're forgetting who will feed the nation.
So how do we begin to change that mentality, that attitude, that mindset of farming? How do we begin to tell young people, listen, farming doesn't necessarily mean you going to the farm with a, you know, kijembe and starting to dig. How do we change that mindset?
First, as I said, incentives, capacity building. You see, if we're talking of incentives, we're talking of, there is like 30% who really want to go to farm.
Yeah.
Because you see, farming contributes to around, it's the second biggest GDP provider in Kenya. So you find that it's a very lucrative venture. But a lot of young people, once they go to the farms, with that mentality, it's a very lucrative venture. And then they go to the farm, they farm, and then they don't get whatever they were anticipating. Maybe because of fertilizers increase, the farm inputs increase. You see the climate changes we are talking about. You see, they will retract. They had invested their money, but now they retract and say, oh, let me just go back to the office. You see, but if we have all this in place, we have we manage the post-harvest losses. We also have an access to good market. You see, and also the variation. This will make sure that these young farmers, they will be motivated.
Don't run at a loss. All right.
Right.
I'm going to give you final remarks, really, and Dr. Mwita, I'll start with you, just to give final remarks on what to expect henceforth and how we can adjust.
I believe that rain-fed can still support agriculture and food security in Kenya if the information is utilized correctly. So farmers in Kenya and other stakeholders who use climate information services should work closely with us, because we could help them to maybe make better informed decisions. And finally, I guess in terms of how do we make agriculture more attractive to young people, because they are the majority in this country, I guess if we can make agriculture profitable, then I'm sure most young people would love to venture into agriculture.
Dr. Richard Munang, here's the thing. 800 million people in the world, which is about 11% of the world population, are prone to climate change. What's what I'm looking for? Are vulnerable, rather, to climate change conditions. 800 million people, that's 11% of the world population. And then you remember Kenya is facing a drought. We saw what happened in Zimbabwe, Zambia, and Malawi with the flooding earlier this year. We've seen what's happening with the Amazon jungle last week, the fire. And then just to realize that here on the African continent, DRC and Congo actually even have more fires than the Amazon jungle itself. So you're seeing all these situations. Kenya is in the middle of a census as we speak. So having that as the background of my question, how is it that population is affecting how we farm?
Yeah, before you answer that, I believe we have a caller from Kiambu, Collins Joroge. Collins, good morning.
Hello, Trevor.
Yes, Collins, go ahead with your comment or question.
My comment is that the government should give political goodwill.
Okay.
Because the companies of the people who process the goods we eat that are...
Yeah, go ahead.
They come from outside the country. So if the big fish in the market, they just bring out the rice from other places, we'll just consume other things from other places and they'll disappoint the farmers.
Okay.
Yeah, so, and for the youth now, you know, it's not every youth want to go to their home ground to go and farm. They should give us even shambas in town.
Okay.
Shambas.
Yeah, we have.
Okay. Collins Joroge there from Kiambu, and he's talking about political goodwill. He says importation should be sort of stopped to have local stuff being used around. But that's also part of what you're saying. I mean, the value addition to it. Why are we importing vis-a-vis using what we have? Is it because we don't have enough or we don't have quality? But there was a question that you had asked.
Right, we'll get to that question in just a little bit. But yes, the population issue, how human population is affecting how we are farming.
Yeah, thank you very much. The reality is that the number of people is not a problem. It's the quality of the people.
So,
and that's what I said before, that a skilled human being, a skilled person is 4 times. That's what the statistics and the practical reality is telling us. A skilled person is 4 times the value of material and 15 times the value of natural capital. Then we're talking about skills here. We're talking about talents. We're talking about building on people's initiatives that are already ongoing. Because as we're speaking, the reality is that the duplication of effort in the entire African continent is costing a lot, both financial and even human resource. And the duplication of effort is what has perpetuated these silos. And the biggest issue that I would actually say, if these silos continuously get proliferated, we will not just be losing finances, we will actually continuously be at the bottom of the pyramid in terms of value addition.
So the issue is not the population, the growth, it's the quality of the people.
If you take, for example, the youth that are getting into the labor market every year with a degree, and most of them try to do something, but without knowing that they have to retool their skill. That's why skills retooling becomes very important to every youth across the entire African continent. Having a PhD is not enough.
When you mean skills, do you mean vocational training skills?
If you go on Twitter at the moment or to social media, you will see youth who are on being on social media is not a problem. The point I'm trying to pass here is you can actually learn a lot of skills online that could position you and get you into more opportunities. So instead of spending time sometimes more on social media gossip, it's good to start spending that time getting more knowledge and at the same time building some extra skills that are in addition to those that you learn in school. Because what I'm trying to say here, if you look at the challenges of post-harvest losses, and I still go back to that, Kenya losing 50 billion every year in terms of post-harvest losses, in addition to the food importation of 160 million US dollars, that's about 16 billion Kenyan shillings. Those are opportunities that are sitting glaring to each and everyone's eyes. But the most important aspect is that we should be able to understand that government role is to create an enabling environment. The area of government putting policies, legislating, implementing, reporting has long gone. And therefore we, the ordinary citizens, must be able to take responsibility, because climate action will not be driven alone by the government. Our daily actions matters, and that climate action provides an investment opportunity for each and everyone. We're talking the agro value chain that is worth $1 trillion US in less than 12 years from today. Manufacturing will not create those jobs. Tourism will not be able to create those jobs, so the jobs will be in the agro value chain. And I think, as Peter said, you do not necessarily need to get your hands soiled to be able to make money. They are dealing with technology. They can be able to connect a farmer to a market and make a cut. They can be able to start creating opportunities within fabricating solar dryers. Just for example, through what the UN Environment is doing, working with countries to be able to create what is called policy harmonization. Because the Ministry of Agriculture, as I said, the solutions to food insecurity do not necessarily lie within the Ministry of Agriculture. They must synchronize the climate-smart agricultural policy with the energy policy, with environment policy, with trade policy, with transportation policy. Because if you go to the rural areas, the roads from point of production to market sometimes, so that then means that the Ministry of Transport and Infrastructure must prioritize route access to villages, especially to where there is a production of most of these crops, so that they can be able to connect to markets. And more importantly, I think this aspect, which is quite very crucial, we must become selfless. There is a lot of selfishness because there is no absence of actions that are happening, especially in the continent and especially driven by the youth. The problem is that they do not foster synergies. Okay.
And Wangai, there's something that I wanted you to delve into before as we wind up here. There's always this argument that we import because we don't have enough. Do you agree with that? Because you've just mentioned the issue of garlic, that you take your garlic to the market and you find that there's another garlic from a different place. But the argument from the people we import is that we don't have enough. As farmers, you're not able to supply all the needs.
First, let me start by saying Africa is the first arable continent in the world. Africa. And so is Kenya. Kenya is very arable. But we need to look at where the lane started beating us. Because if you look at the statistics, if I go back a little bit, you will find that Kenya is losing approximately 12,000 hectares of trees every year. That's an alarming rate. But we are proud the government is a private sector of what they are doing, reforestation and all that. But you will, as much as the reforestation is also going on, there need to be a little bit of public-private participation. Participation.
In partnership,
Because if we're talking of importation, and our country is very arable, that one, we need to train our youths, these young children that are coming up, that agriculture is the only way to go. Agriculture is the only way to sustain our country, you know? Because if we plant more trees, and also we'll also look at the other factors, you will find that Kenya of today is not the Kenya of 30 years ago. It's not the Kenya of 30 years ago. Why? Because if you look at a place like Eastern Province, in 1970s, there were a lot of trees. And it used to rain. In 1990s, we knew that in April, it will rain. A lot of rains. In August, it will rain. But look at it right now.
It's not the case.
It's not.
It's not the case.
Okay.
You see? So we need to have a more better approach to our upcoming generation, so that in future we can have these, we won't be able to, we won't be importing food out of the country.
All right, brilliant. Dr. Richard Munang, Africa Regional Climate Change Program Coordinator, UNEP, thank you so much for coming in. Peter Wangai, New Tech Farmer and also entrepreneur, asante sana. And Dr. Richard Muita, Senior Assistant Director for Climate Services at the Kenya Meteorological Department. And most importantly, thank you for taking part in this discussion and change with the times. Basically, that's the idea we are giving here. But there's a lot coming through on our social media accounts and SMS lines as well. Let's see what you're saying. First up, Tom Seba says climate change is real. Citizens should be disciplined and adapt to solutions to climate change mitigation.
So sticking to Twitter, Golichas, I hope I pronounced that right. You say climate change is happening already with expected rainfall short of expectations as we lost out on what we planted.
All right, let's see. Governor 254, people have encroached on wet areas and forests to create space for living. This leads to drying out of water bodies or wetlands as people bring in concrete and other solid construction material that isn't so good at conserving wetlands. He continues to say they need to be taught about food conservation. The National Food Basket should only come in when the situation is very dire, since they are able to feed themselves from the food that they stored away during the productive months.
Robert, still on Twitter, you say getting the fundamentals rights, policy coherence in implementation, incentives, mindset change. These are the first steps of overhauling Africa's agriculture for the 60 years of failure which we are now experiencing.
Right, let's see what you're saying on 22422. That's SMS line. Kindly give your name and where you're texting from. George from Kakamega says agriculture production is the best investment. Extension services are not active at the rural level. I run agri-production village bees hubs, and the major observation is farmers are willing to farm high value and climate smart crops, but they don't have information. Training.
The issue of accessibility to information. Yes. Mayende, you're watching from Bungoma. You're saying, in my opinion, Kenyans lack information on modern farming methods. I have half an acre, but it gives me a net income of about 2,000 bob per day, since I don't rely on rainfall, but instead practice irrigation by water pump. All
right. Brilliant. You don't leave a name or where you're texting from. You say importing food from other countries makes farming very challenging and very expensive to an ordinary farmer, e.g. eggs from Uganda, beans and tomatoes, rice from India, Brazil, and others.
Okay. Kimani, you say the discourse is informative and painful. As you discuss, there is a rich politician planning to intercept through imports who is working with the farmer. Where are these policy implementators? Is it possible without politics involved?
All right, you don't leave a name or where you're texting from. You say environment belongs to us as human beings. We should be taking care of it at all time. We should expect more unless we change our behavior. These are kickbacks from Mother Nature.
Okay.
All right, thank you so much for taking part in that discussion. Now we take that break. We'll be back with more.